Alright, so I haven't seen many videos on this. I've seen a lot on the F-Series, the pickup truck, but what I have here is a 1999 Ford E-450. It has the 7.3 liter PowerStroke diesel engine from the time, and it has the ambulance package because it is a retired ambulance. And I hadn't seen any videos on doing an alternator swap out, and so my upper alternator was bad, and also my my Serpentine belt was in need of replacement at the same time, so I'm doing both of those together. As you see, I've already got the engine apart, but I'm going to walk backwards and talk about some of the basic tools that I needed to get to where I am, and show you guys how I'm putting it all back into place. So like I said, this is just going to be the process to put it back in, reverse it to take it out. I've already taken out the old one, so this new one, I'm gonna need an 11mm wrench. I did need a pair of just basic multi-tool pliers to attach this socket. The 11mm wrench for the positive terminal, or an adjustable wrench if you don't have metric. I'm gonna need a 1/2" socket to actually bolt this down, and we'll eventually need a 5/16 to put the air intake and filter back together, but we'll get to that part in a little bit. So first step, I'm gonna just tighten down this nut. I've inserted this tabbed socket first, so we'll tighten that down and then we'll get the alternator into place. Alright, so I've already goofed up in my narration. That's a 10mm wrench that I just used to tighten that down, not an 11mm. And this is the only place where I've encountered any metric parts in this process. Everything else is standard. This machine is in North America, so that makes sense. But so now I'm going to seat the alternator back onto its posts, and so you see here are the 3 screw holes where it came out of. So I'm just going to seat that into there, and I'll be back in a second. Okay, so I've gotten that seated in, and you see I have this black plate that simply holds this wire in place that runs down past it, and the 3 bolt holes on the alternator line up with the bolt holes on the frame where it just came off of. And so I'm just going to take these bolts that I pulled off of the old alternator, slide them down in there, tighten them up. These are, let's see, pretty sure these were 1/2". Let's test that. Here's my 1/2" socket. So just to verify for you guys, so yep, that's a 1/2". That's a 1/2" bolt head there. So I'm going to slide these in. In the E-Series, it's a little bit of a tight fit, as you see, but it's nothing insurmountable. So on this side, I have this plate that holds the one wire in place, and that's fine. We'll just get in there and start to hand screw these in so that I have the alignment in place before we reach our socket back in there and tighten it up. And so I'll be back in a jiffy with this tightened down. Alright, so those bolts are all tightened down in there now. I had to tighten them real good and hard. When I was pulling it out, I don't know if it was just a factor of corrosion, age, or how tightly those bolts are in there, but they were quite a beast to open, so I tightened them down real good and hard. I don't have any specs on actual measurements for how tight. I did it by hand with a ratchet. I was able to get them off the same way. Didn't need anything special. And this engine's over 20 years old and looked like the original alternator, so I don't think we need to go super tight with it, but tight as I could by hand. Now I'm gonna fit the Serpentine belt on. We'll get to why this is on the ground here later, but every engine should have a belt guide. Since this is the dual alternator or ambulance package, we will be following the line that is this dotted line here, because that dotted line has space for the second alternator, which is almost directly below the first one. Fortunately, I don't have to swap that one out in this repair, because these two are, this one is much harder to get to. This one up here, which is in the place of the normal alternator for the single alternator engine, is much easier to access, as you just saw. This one is way underneath of the belly of the machine, and so we're not going to go down there. But we are going to have to reach down in there to rerun this belt, and so I'm not going to show you the process of rerunning the belt. It just goes back in the same way. If you're only doing an alternator swap, you do not have to pull out the belt in its entirety. I did need to pull the belt out because that also needed to be replaced, but yeah, I'm gonna cut away now and hopefully come back when the belt is attached and ready to go. Alright, I wanted to get back to this. Sorry if there's background noise now, but I wasn't able to finish this up last night before darkness fell, because I goofed up the routing of the belt a couple times. I've never put a belt back on, so that was exciting, but I did get it routed. It was easiest to start from the bottom. It would have been 3 times as easier to have 2 sets of hands, but I was able to do it myself, so that's even without having done it before. If you've replaced a belt, you'll probably have an even easier time than I did. But if you need to figure it out, you can follow the guide. I'd suggest you start from the bottom and work your way up. I tried to start from the top and work my way down the first time and got all tangled up in the fan, which is down in there. But got it all sorted out now. Got it run. I'm going to show you the tool that I had to use in order to release the tension. I needed to get a big old breaker bar. This one has a 1/2 inch bit on the end here, and there's two pulleys down here directly underneath of the alternator we replaced, and they have a square spot for this peg to fit in right there, right in between them, and you work that in to that hole right there, and once that's in place, you can pull this breaker bar all the way over this direction. I'm not going to do it now because I don't want the belt to pop out, but that's what you do to release the tension on this belt. If you are replacing the alternator and not just the belt, I would suggest you just release the tension and pull the belt off of the alternator. Like I said at the beginning of the videos, I actually had to replace the belt as well because mine was worn out, so that's why I had all of the extra work of figuring out how to reroute that. But if you're just replacing your alternator, you can just release the tensioner, pull the belt up and off of here, make sure you don't get your fingers pinched underneath in the process, and then release the tension, replace the alternator, pull the tensioner back, and you'll be set to go. So now we're going to put back together the pieces that fit here, that cover up that hole. Ideally, if you're doing this work, you'll stuff some sort of clean rag down in here to keep anything from getting down through there. But for the purpose of these videos, I don't have that set up. So we'll start back getting, there's 3 components that fit in here. And we'll be back with the first of those. Let's see. They all got put in the garage here. So first bit's gonna be this. which fits in here. It hangs from two bolts that go through up here behind the engine compartment, and then two more bolts that slot in here at the front of the engine compartment. And it fits snugly together with this little bit right here. And so we'll get those two slid together so you can see how that all works. This is going to go up here, and these two bits are going to slide into the opening on the front of the compartment here. We pull the intake up there and get it settled down in place. Now this does not fit super tight here. There's a little bit of play in it, but that's all right. Then we'll put these 4 bolts back in. To do that, we're going to need our socket, and this time we'll need our socket with a 5/16. Oh, that's in my other toolbox here. Let's pop that off. And I'll be right back. Oh, here's the part. Nope. So for my socket set, I have to have this adapter. The 5/16 uses a 1/4 inch drive, and the ratchet is a 3/8. I use the 3/8 to 1/4 inch adapter, and I can use that 5/16. Get our nuts and our bolts, and hand tighten them in. Same bolt, all 4 spots. Just need to get lined up here. There we go. And the 4th one in. Tighten them all up. And so I'll just tighten those down with the ratchet, and we'll be right back. For the final stage of the process, we're going to put these air filters back in. So they come out just as a single unit like this. 2 separate filters. Again, this is the first maintenance I've done on this engine, and so I don't know why I have 2 very, very different filters here. I made different companies, different sources. That's not so important. What's important is we get them back in. We line up this valve with the intake there. We get these tabs slotted down into this spot, and then we will hook them into place. So those filters themselves nestle down in pretty nicely. We don't have to have this in the way while we do that. Line up my slots and the outflow, that intake there. Get these latch down into place. Once I have that all fine and good, this is just a matter of hooking these latches. Now there are 4 of them across here, and oh hey, that's not seating properly. No, I guess maybe that is. Nope, there we go. That latched in better. Well, as you can see, this is an older engine. There we go, that's seated in happily. This one's in. Trying to convince this one to stay in. I might need to get some replacement clips because there's supposed to be 4 and there's not one over here. Well, it is what it is. Now there's a plug for this sensor here. See, here's a sensor. Gotta fish around for where that got pushed. We'll hook up that sensor once we find the wire for it. Well, where did you go? Okay, so I had set it up here so I wouldn't lose it and promptly lost it. So we slide that on. And that, I believe, is our sensor for the air filter, airflow. And we're just about done in the engine compartment. The only thing left to do is we have to tighten down the strap around here, which is going to take a slotted screwdriver. And then we'll hook back up the batteries. Alright, here we are. We're going to tighten this down. You can see here the notch, which tells us not to seat it farther in than that. We'll tighten this until we have as good and tight of a seal as we can get. Without breaking anything. Okay, that's pretty tight there. Now it's time to reconnect our battery and see. Now these batteries, these big diesel engines have 2 batteries for the starter. Down here you'll see on an ambulance they often take one of the starter batteries out from under the hood because of the extra space for the second alternator and all the extra wiring, instead of having a starter on each side. This tells you we have the starter battery here and another one back in the box. So we'll hook this one on first. You always want to make sure when you're working, especially the electrical parts of an engine, that you have disconnected the negative terminals. Is what I've been told is the better choice. And then around here on my model is the second starter battery. So again, we'll connect that in, and then we'll get our ratchet out again and go back to the 1/2-inch ratchet. Alright. Now for this one, I actually will be coming back in a second because I need the deep well socket for that. But for this one I need my little one. So we will hand tighten this first, and then just give it a little bit of a turn. We don't want to over tighten battery terminals. They are very fragile and break easily. So again, same thing here. We will hand tighten as much as we can. And then for good measure, switch out the 1/2 inch for the deep well 1/2 inch. And just give it a little bit of a turn. We don't want to tighten it too much. We also want to be very careful of this, that we don't span from terminal to terminal. All right, now we pull all the stuff off of here, and yes, I did lubricate some stuff up while I was in there, just so it's easier next time. Now we get the keys and we give it a try, see if it works. And there she goes. She's running beautifully. Sounds just like she's all ready for it. Obviously this is a very rough machine. Got a lot of work that it could take. Could use radio at all. I've cleaned a lot on the inside, despite what it looks like. So, yeah, until next time, keep cool. One last thing I want to point out for completeness' sake. My unit is, like I said, in rough shape, so there's a lot that can be done to it. This part specifically should be held down by 4 Phillips head screws. Here, 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 and here. When I got it, it only had 1 of them, so as I'm cleaning up from my work, I'm going to try and remember I have 1 screw to put back in place. So that fits down in there. I don't know if I can do this one-handed or not, but we'll try. There we go. That really doesn't need much of a screw at all. That's not really threading in there. That expansion clip around the screw seems to be doing all of the holding in. But like I said, my vehicle did not come with all 4 of them in place. So in addition to what you saw inside, my grille is very precariously held on. All sorts of things that can be improved with time. And yeah, if I can do this work, this is my first ever repair, fires up, runs beautifully, then I encourage you, get under the hood, get your hands dirty, get yourself dirty, learn about your vehicle.